Since 1934, Iowa's farmers have turned to the Iowa Farm Bureau spokesman as their trusted news source. Now, the Spokesman Speaks. Listen in and hear from leading experts on topics important to farmers and agriculture. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to our February 2nd edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. I'm Andrew Wheeler. Today we're going to offer you something personal and something practical. We'll start with Rob Sharkey, an Illinois crop farmer who's better known as the SharkFarmer by his podcast, radio, and TV show fans. Rob recently attended Iowa Farm Bureau's Young Farmer Conference, where he hosted a special episode of the SharkFarmer Podcast with young Iowa Farm Bureau leaders and award winners. Afterwards, we were able to corral Rob for a conversation to share with you, our Spokesman Speaks podcast listeners. So we'll share that conversation with you first, and then bring you some helpful budgeting tips from another speaker at our Young Farmer Conference, Seth Appelgate of Farm Credit Services of America. Let's get started with Rob Sharkey, who's a farmer, a hunting outfitter, and the host of multiple shows across podcasting, radio, and TV. Iowa Farm Bureau's Caitlin Lamb had a chance to ask him all about it.
When they asked me to interview you, I was excited because I've followed you on multiple platforms and watched the show, listened to the podcast, but then also a little nervous because I recently saw how Vance Crowe gave you huge kudos, talking about how you're one of the best ag interviewers in a long time and how much you've given back to agriculture. So I really don't want to mess this up, and I want to tell your story very well.
Yeah, well, I don't think anybody's really got high expectations, so don't let that bother you at all.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let's go ahead and just start by talking about the podcast. Okay. What made you decide to do that?
Well, I was running a white-tailed deer outfitter, so we had hunters come in, and we had a gal come in. She was doing a podcast. It was a hunting podcast, and the more she talked about it, the more I'm like, this could be kind of fun. So I started one, and she's like, you're supposed to start 5, right? So people can listen to a bunch of them. And I did 2 hunters, and then I did 3 farmers. And the hunters were like people that we had come in, and they had funny hunting stories, so it was going to be hilarious. But what I learned was if you weren't in a hunt camp and you didn't know those guys, they were horrible. It was the worst 30 minutes of audio. We violated people's ears with those first podcasts. But the farming ones, they took off, so we pivoted.
It's funny because I did try to go out and find those first few podcasts, and I couldn't find them.
Good.
I was hoping to see the evolution.
Again, it was a lot of inside jokes, which, nobody wants to hear that stuff. Yeah. So,
what is it that you think made the farming ones take off?
Timing was on my side. Twitter, X, was red hot with agriculture. And who we were interviewing was people from there. And people they wanted to know who was behind the tweets. So I think timing had a lot to do with it. So, and it was not me being good, because I was far from a good interviewer when we started out. So I had luck and timing on my side.
At what point did you think, hey, I've really got something here and that this could be a success?
It took off so quick. It was in the first few weeks that I was like, okay, this honestly could lead to something. And then we cruised around for a year just being stupid. And my wife is like, you need to make a business out of this. So I don't fight with my wife. We fought 3 times, I think, in our 30 years of marriage. One of them was about the podcast, and it was a big one. And it was because we were dropping F-bombs and talking the way we shouldn't. And she's like, you have to stop that. And all I heard was, I'm going to control what you're doing on your podcast. So we're fighting. But her point was, number one, I want to go to church and not be afraid of my friends listening to that podcast. I want our kids to listen to that podcast. And this could be monetized. So I want advertisers. So she may have been right. We'll never know.
Now, of those 3 things, which were most important to you? Facing the church, your family, or the monetization?
I will say it's the kids, right? And I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. Because I knew that the kids were listening to him. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. But the monetization, it wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah.
I'm like, no one is advertising on podcasts back then. And then, we messed around with some little ones, and then we signed with a digital ag company out of Canada. And, it was huge. I mean, it was a 6-figure deal for a year, and all of a sudden, maybe Emily might have been right about some stuff.
Well, I can see why you probably never fight with your wife, because I was just talking to her, and she just seems like the sweetest gal.
It's all an act.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, it's all an act, yeah.
I don't know if I believe that. It's hard to fake that type of genuineness, honestly. So
no,
I thought she was just a doll.
She does everything. We are together constantly. And, she's my best friend. She's the love of my life. And I would not be here with you if it wasn't for her. I would still be like yelling into a microphone and nobody would listen. But she is the one that turned the SharkFarmer into an actual media company.
Now, talk about this SharkFarmer. First of all, I always see you wearing the Sharks Don't Swim Backwards shirts. How many of those do you have in your closet? Or is this the one and you just wash it all the time?
We used to give them out. And then, we'd be like, let us know. And we would send them to you. Well, it was overwhelming. She was sending out 10 a day. And, number one, it does add up in money, but it was her time. So then we handed that off to where you can go online and do it. But the Sharks Don't Swim Backwards, it was a logo that was designed by my son. The antlers are actually sharks, and it goes back to us being an outfitter. The saying, Sharks Don't Swim Backwards, there is a YouTuber in North Carolina, Meredith Bernard, this farm wife. When we started the radio show, she got us a little shark fin, and she had our logo on there and said, Sharks Don't Swim Backwards. So I texted her. I'm like, I'm going to steal this. That was that.
I mean, I did Google it, and it is factual. But does it mean anything deeper to you?
The story that we tell crowds and meetings is a story of us failing a lot in business. And, I'm a failed hog farmer, and I've made so many mistakes, it's not even funny. I failed and failed and failed. But every time I did, I learned. So that's what I want people to know, is that you fail doesn't mean that you are a failure. As long as you learn something from that. All the failures we had led up to, us talking today. So you can screw up royally, but you can still come out the other side if you have faith, if you work hard, if you do things right. As long as you have your word, as long as you have a family that loves you, and you could do anything.
Well, I hear you on that. I was asked to speak to a graduating class, a group of seniors at a high school, and their questions are, would you do anything differently? I'm like, I'm sure that there's plenty of things that I could have done differently, decisions I could have made, but then would I be married to my husband? Would I have the best 2 kids? Would we have the opportunity
to farm? Are they really the
farm?
best?
To me, yes, I do. I will brag on them all day. And it doesn't mean that parenting isn't difficult. It's not all rainbows and butterflies, but it's certainly a blessing by far. And I did want to ask you about the outfitter part, not necessarily about what you do. I have a deer hunting question.
Oh, okay.
So my husband hunts deer in Iowa, shotgun first season. And it is the only time of year that he goes out and buys Little Debbie.
Oh.
What is that? Because I thought that was just maybe him. But then I saw memes online of deer seeing someone in a tree stand saying like, hey, I hear you opening up that oatmeal cream pie. Is that a part of this hunting culture, or am I just getting fed the algorithm?
I think it's less in the hunting culture in that you're away from your wife.
You can make your own food decisions.
I'm going to choose what I'm going to eat, and I don't care.
And it's going to be Hostess.
Yes, right.
Okay, maybe that makes more sense.
And a lot of times, like when you're texting your buddy, you say Hostess, and really what you're talking about is whiskey, and you just don't want people to know.
Oh, it's a cover.
It's a code word.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've been interpreting this all wrong for so many years. Oh my goodness, that's funny. But then also, when we talk about the podcast, it's turned into TV opportunities as well. Was that difficult going from this strictly listening type medium to seeing yourself on screen?
I hate watching myself on screen. A lot of the the editing and a lot of the proofing Emily does, just because I'll never do it because I hate it. But it went podcast to XM radio, and the guy that owned the XM radio was with Patrick Gotch, who also owned RFD TV. Sadly, he's passed away. But yeah, we pitched him the idea of SharkFarmer, and he's like, okay, let's do it. And what I didn't understand was that it means I'm going to give you the airtime, you figure it out. So we didn't know a thing about TV, any of it. I mean, literally, we didn't know how long the segments were. We didn't know anything. But, we wanted to do it. We figured it out. We asked a lot of questions, made a lot of mistakes. And, now I think we can pull off a TV show.
What was the biggest challenge? Was it finding the content? Was it figuring out what your presence looked like?
Yeah. Energy.
Yeah.
And I still get that. Emily will do stuff and she's like, you got to do it again with more energy. And when we first started doing TV, it was like, I don't get it. It was really ticking me off. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I would see the stuff I do, and you have to be 10 times more of a personality than you are anywhere else, because I don't know what it is about TV, but you'll bore people to death.
Like, it doesn't translate through the airwaves very well.
Not at all.
Yeah.
No.
I can see that. One of the things that I do with Iowa Farm Bureau is I help people be better advocates for agriculture. And some people have this very easygoing type of demeanor, kind of like you, and it can come off in a certain way. So I've had to tell people before, I want you to say what you just said again, but tell it to me as if I'm a child and you are reading me a story and I have to be excited about it. And so it's almost that over-the-topness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You really do. And I don't think you understand that until you see yourself doing it. And it's like, why am I angry and boring?
Well, I don't know that anyone would describe you as angry or boring. So you must have figured it out at some point.
We're still trying.
And how do you surface all of the people that you do? Because you talk to the most interesting people, or I think everyone is interesting, but it seems like you have a good way of bringing story out of people.
I think a lot of it is listening. When I first started doing podcasts, I would have a list of questions, and I would ask a question, and as a person was answering that question, I'd be looking at the next question, thinking of what I was going to say and all this stuff. And then I'd go to edit it, and I would catch them. I was like, why didn't I ask them about this? Well, I wasn't listening.
Yeah.
So I think if you listen, people will tell you what they want to talk about. And if they want to talk about it, that's going to be what's going to grab the audience. You can drag stuff out of people, but it's never as good as when they naturally let their walls down. To me, that is a great interview.
You do that so well. And there are some times when you are talking to people about things that are sensitive, things that happened in their life. How do you go about that in a way where you're still telling someone's story, but also respecting that hardship that they had?
80% of the time, it's discussed beforehand.
Okay.
I and the guest know that we are going to talk about that. Mm-hmm. And I and the guest know that there might be emotion involved. So I make them feel as comfortable as I can beforehand. With the podcast, it's edited. We have to do this a lot with the radio, is we have to talk with the person beforehand, because you can get people on there and you can tell they're nervous, right? Yeah. And you have to talk with them. Emily is like overly nice to them. I make fun of them because that kind of creates a bond too.
Yeah. So,
and then when we feel like, all right, they feel more comfortable with it, that's when we start the interview. It's not a gotcha thing. Mm-hmm. It's happened. Yeah. It has happened where we got to talking about things, and I didn't realize that I'm opening a very personal story, but most of the times we know what we're going into. I look at my life as in two different sections. Myself before I lost my son, and myself after. And when I lost my son, everything changed. I actually just did a podcast a couple weeks ago. It was like the first time that she had lost her fiance too.
Was that Belinda?
Belinda.
I listened to that one, yeah.
it was funny because I'm so used to preparing her, and then she turned around and she's preparing me.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to ask you this. I'm like, I don't want to answer that. So, I went for a long time. That was probably the first time that I'd ever really delved into, because loss is just so tragic to a person, and it affects their life and who they are as a person. So it's been difficult for me to talk about that, but she was fantastic, and her being so open and honest, I think it helped me.
Yeah. And you're like over here doing the podcast, you're doing life, you're doing the farm thing, you're doing the shows. How do you balance all that, especially with a family?
Well, my oldest son has come back to the farm, which is a story there in itself. I never wanted to pressure the kids back to the farm, but when we lost Ian, that night, I asked them to come back to the farm. Talk about not a proud dad moment when you look at it later. Since then, I'm like, you don't feel obligated to stay here. He seems like he's really enjoying it, and he's doing a great job. So I have him helping on that side. And on the media side, I have Emily. She's doing things that I could not do this without her. I would miss stuff. I told her once, I'm like, I would hate to know if I was doing this by myself, how much money I would have lost because I didn't realize that people didn't pay me. So, she's on all that.
Do you manage your farm business too? Or
I do. Now, the farming
Okay.
I love.
Okay.
I look at now in my life as the downtimes is planting and harvest, which is completely opposite from what it used to be. So, I don't know. I look at myself, I don't think I'm overly busy. So, I think it's just what you prepare to do, what you plan to do.
Yeah. And what would you do if you weren't doing all these things, right?
Bad stuff, eating Hostess.
Up in tree stands. / whiskey. Whatever.
Yeah.
Tell me about the farm. How long have you been farming?
So all my life, I've got 5 older sisters, so I know what my parents were doing. They just kept going because that's the way it was back in the day. Only the boys came back, and so I always knew what I was supposed to do, and I was always okay with that.
Yeah.
Right after college, I went right back to the farm. My dad needed help. Worked for him as a couple of years as a hired hand, and then, long story very short, when he retired in 2010, I told him I didn't want to raise hogs anymore because I didn't have the passion for it. So that's when we became just corn and soybeans.
Okay, so you said that you were the only boy, so you kind of knew what was expected of you, but that is what you wanted.
Yeah. I've never thought about doing anything else. They always ask, what else would you be doing? And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's all I've ever wanted to do.
That's my son. He's 7, and all he wants to do is farm like dad. And you can't convince him that he's going to be doing anything else. And, well, actually, it's so funny because you have Casey's in Illinois, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Good Lord.
Stupid question.
Starting to wonder about who Farm Bureau hires here.
So my husband took our son into Casey's, and they were picking up some Hostess probably for the farm. And someone asked him, old people always like to chat up the little kids. And they're like, oh, buddy, you going to be a farmer like your dad someday? And he looks at him and says, I already am a farmer. Like, in his mind,
You
it's
stupid
so
old man.
Can't you see? So that's always fun to hear.
Does he wear the pliers?
We don't really have a need for that. I've always been curious about the plier thing. I feel like we use other things more than pliers more often.
You go in my neighborhood and you go to like the John Deere or whatever, and you see a farmer without pliers, you ask him if he's feeling all right.
But do you wear pliers?
Constantly.
And you use them constantly, or it's not just part of the outfit?
If I lose them, I literally feel like I've lost my right hand. Yeah. Pocket knife and pliers.
Okay, I can see pocket knife for sure. I feel like we run a lot of old equipment, so I feel like a hammer would probably be more useful than pliers some days. But yeah, it's all been fun watching them grow up on the farm too.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of young farmers, we're at the Young Farmer Conference here with Iowa Farm Bureau. You talked to quite a few of our members, and I know that you talk to tons of young farmers across the nation as well. What advice do you have for young farmers, knowing the challenges that they face or anything in life?
I think know where you're at. If you are coming into a family operation that can support you, and you can look down the road and go, this is something that I can raise a family on. If not, you got to diversify. You got to look at doing something else, whether that's livestock or selling seed or doing a podcast. I don't know what that is, but you've got to find that one thing that you can rely on, because you're going to have years where you don't make money. It might be this year. You're going to have something to rely on that. And Emily came home and she raised our kids, and that's what we wanted to do. It's not for everybody, but if you're going to make that decision, make sure that you can, make sure it financially makes sense. Farming it's a tough gig, and I'm not talking about the work. I'm talking about the stress, and probably every business is this way, but I only know farming. The unknown of it. I'm sitting on my corn now, and they're talking about E15. You're talking about potential droughts. Do I hold on to my corn? Do I sell it? That type of stuff that will keep you up at night. Worry about what you can control. Don't worry about what you can't. I finally get to a point where weather doesn't bother me, because I can't control it.
What do you do? Yep.
Yeah. So I say that, my wife's probably going, he just lied to you.
She's like, he's complaining about the weather every morning. Well, I think that's sage advice.
Yeah.
And I would like to close this by asking you, because of all of the people that you interview in agriculture, I'm trying to think of how to ask this exactly, but if someone were outside of agriculture were to ask you, what is the typical farmer? What do they care about? What way is agriculture going with all of the people that you talk to, all of the different industries that you've delved into? What would your response be?
It makes me think of our PBS show, which I did not want to do. I thought it was, I didn't watch PBS. I mean, PBS,
You didn't watch Arthur?
Well, I did as a kid. I didn't even know it was still around. And then Emily is like, you got to go meet with them, because they called us, which never happens. And we met with them, and then we started doing a shot of ag. And now for the first time, we're talking to people outside of agriculture. Everything's always been in a bubble. Now we're outside of it. And it kills me. It's our biggest audience. And it's a local PBS show. And the success of that show just boggles my mind, because yes, we've got all the farmers that are watching PBS. We got them. Yeah, they love us. But the people that are watching it that don't farm, and they'll stop me like at Walmart, and they're like, we just love knowing all these people are in agriculture. I thought a farmer was just, a person in, bibs raising corn. A lot of truth to it is, you run through those people pretty quick. When you're doing a show every single week, then I'm challenging Emily to get me different guests. Find me first generation farmers, because they're not out there. Find me farmers that are not raising corn and soybeans. And she'd find them. And I'm like, what are you doing? I don't want to interview this person. The person's a hippie, right? I don't want to interview this person. And then you get talking to them, and they figured it out. The full-time gig is farming now in a way that I never thought. And that's what the people that aren't involved in agriculture love. They loved how diverse it is. That's the biggest comment we get from that PBS show, is we can't believe all the different sectors, all the different branches that agriculture's had. We had no idea. And to be honest, I didn't either. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I promoted a PBS show.
Yes, everyone go watch A Shot of Ag on PBS. But no, that makes sense to me. There's so much in agriculture, even here in Iowa, people will think that it's one thing, but in Iowa Farm Bureau, we have a diverse membership. We've got people growing flowers, people who are into niche livestock, people who are also working on different types of innovation for more sustainable practices. And I think people would be delighted to learn more about that and just know that we're continually improving in agriculture.
The gal we just interviewed that we butchered her name. Lakea. I can say it now. I loved her story because, they built that shed and now that's how they're surviving. Both of them are now full-time on the farm. I love that story. I would have made fun of that story 5 years ago. You're selling milk to hippies. Well, guess what? Both of them are farming now. Both of them love it. I love those type of stories.
Thanks, Rob. If you'd like to hear more from Rob Sharkey, you won't have to search too hard. As we mentioned, you can follow what he's doing across podcasting, radio, and TV. And remember to tune into his special episode featuring Iowa's young farm leaders and award winners, which will be coming out soon. To find that upcoming episode, visit SharkFarmer.com or check out the link to the SharkFarmer Podcast down in the notes for this episode. Okay, let's pivot from the Shark Farmer to a conversation about dollars and cents on the farm. Seth Appelgate is a lending officer who specializes in working with young farmers for Farm Credit Services of America. Seth has actually spoken at a couple different conferences recently, including Iowa Farm Bureau's Young Farmer Conference and the Coalition to Support Iowa's Farmers Farming for the Future Conference. That's where Seth caught up with Spokesman writer Corey Munson.
So starting out, Seth, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your role over at Farm Credit Services of America?
Yeah, so my role at Farm Credit, I'm what's called a developing markets officer, which just basically means I'm a lending officer working specifically with young beginning operations. So generally those who have been farming for less than 10 years, oftentimes that means we're under the age of 35. Those are the individuals I'm working with at Farm Credit. I'm originally from just northeast of Marshalltown, where my family farms corn, soybeans, hogs. That's my dad and my brother and their families running that. And I've been with Farm Credit for 6 years now, and I cover central Iowa, working with beginning operations there across roughly 12 counties.
Today we're on the sidelines of the Farming for the Future conference. You spoke earlier about managing living costs, expenses, and stuff like that. So what kind of things fall under that category?
Yeah, it really does include anything that is a personal expense. So it'd be a house, it'd be vehicles, it'd be medical prescriptions, utilities, anything that someone spends that is not directly connected to the farm operation.
So when you say managing living costs, we're talking about budgeting.
We typically are talking about budgeting, yes. Someone actively budgeting will have a pretty good idea of what they're managing and what they're spending. But even if someone doesn't go through the work of line by line categorizing and sorting through their expenses, they can still do things to manage major areas of their spending. Even if they're not tracking everything, they can still make habit-based decisions so that they can spend their money on the right things that they want to, instead of getting to the end of the month or the end of the year and saying, where'd the money go? I'm not sure.
So when you're talking about managing these costs, then what does that mean to a person? Are they opening up a spreadsheet and making a list of those costs? What do you recommend to folks?
I put it this way. When someone thinks about managing their cost of living and budgeting, in terms of budgeting systems, whether they use an app, which there's some great apps out there. Few to mention would be Monarch, which has a really great budgeting system, and then another one called Simplify by Quicken. But if you're the kind of person who says, I don't need an app to pull in and sync all my transactions, because the apps that I'm talking about, you do have to pay for them. If you want to use Excel or Google Sheets, then do it. It's the system that you'll keep doing, and that makes you feel like you have a good grasp on what's happening. Just like a workout. The most effective workout is the one you keep doing, not the perfect science-based exactly what you should do. It's the thing that you will keep doing. It's certainly critical for young operations as we get started and we maybe don't have the backing or the risk protection of years of equity built up or years of cash reserves. We certainly don't have that when we get started most of the time. But the generations that have been in it for a while also would really benefit from this kind of work. It's anything that's going to help us manage how we spend our money so that we're spending it in the ways we actually want to. Is it the house? Is it the second house? Is it a lake home? As the generations get older, we're maybe not looking at, should I get a new truck or something like that? Maybe we're looking at a decision of like I just mentioned, a lake house. And can we do that? Is that what we actually want to do? It comes down to each operation. Maybe we can get the lake house, but that means we can't buy the 80 that comes up next to us. That's just a decision someone has to make based on their priorities.
So is budgeting different for a farm family compared to maybe a family that lives in town and has a regular, 8 to 5 job?
There are a lot of similarities. There's certainly a lot of overlap. The general concepts are important, but most of the time, someone who is simply going to work, like you said, a 9 to 5 job and be in town, they're managing for different priorities. If you're on the farm, you've got to hold on to a decent amount of working capital or liquid reserves, liquid cash, that someone off farm simply doesn't. They're going to know exactly what their income is going to be. They know pretty much what their expenses are going to be. And so they can run generally a tighter margin, and they have different goals. Most people who are working a normal 9 to 5 job, they're not trying to save up to buy $1 million asset like 80 acres. And for most farmers, they don't want to buy just one 80 acre, not just $1 million investment. They want to buy multiple ones, and they want to continue to do that. Generally, off farm, we're not quite doing that. Maybe we're investing it in the stock market and things like that, but those don't require you to hold on to cash year after year and also be prepared for the ups and downs of the market. We've seen how corn and soybean prices have been very volatile, cattle very volatile recently. That's not something you have to prepare for when you have an off-farm job. You know what your income is for the most part, where our farmers don't, so we need to have more reserves.
Another thing you mentioned today was gaining freedom through the process of setting up a budget or having your expenditures almost set in stone. So tell us a little bit about how that freedom is gained through restriction.
So I'd put it this way. When you look at, I'm just going to use a married couple as an example here. Maybe it's me and my wife. I don't know. If you've got one person who wants to save a little more as their natural tendency and one person who wants to spend a little more, what that budget forces, when you both agree on it and you carry it out, it forces you to make sure you don't go over your means. You're spending too much on, let's just take restaurants for an example, or entertainment. But on the other end, if you have a rolling budget, which is what I would encourage for something like that, you look at it and you realize, oh my goodness, we have $500, $1,000 saved up in restaurants or whatever your specific budget is. I need to be spending that more. That's something I value, is spending time with my partner, going out to eat some food. So it kind of helps balance that. And that could be true for home improvements. That could be true for vacations. That could be true for kids' education. Are we putting more in there than we think we need to, or should we dial it back? Once we've made that decision in a budget, we can feel free to either stop spending and know that that's exactly what we wanted to do so we could accomplish that other goal, or we need to spend more of it because we're not actually accomplishing the objectives and the priorities that we have laid out for our lives.
Well, and not to get too far down the marriage counseling road here, but it sounds like communication within these budgeting processes is also very important.
Yes, if you're doing this with a partner, it's going to be challenging. And I would say the work of working on a budget and the disagreements you have on that are much better than the ones where we just react to whatever happened. We get to the end of the month or we get to the end of a couple years, or we get to the end of what I see sometimes with operations that have been farming for 30, 40 years is we get to the end of that time period and we can't hand it off to the next generation in the way we wanted to, or we can't buy out grandma's farm when that time comes. I'd rather have the conflict over a budget on a weekly or monthly kind of basis than to have gone years and not actually live out the lives we wanted to. And that it's not always fun in the short term, but I think the long-term benefits of that are definitely worth the short-term struggles.
Going off of that, what are some common pitfalls that farm families can fall into?
Some of the things that could be a challenge, it does depend on, each operation being different, but certainly one that can happen, it's a common phrase, is iron disease. If we are continually upgrading machinery and equipment, that can kind of run its way over into our personal side as well. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's vehicles, maybe it's toys. If you're listening to this right now and you're going, I don't struggle with vehicles or toys at all, well, keep a real budget and then you'll figure out where is your area. I can't figure it out over the air here. But once you start tracking it, you'll figure out where that pitfall area is. And most of the time, we're aware of it and we just don't want to talk about it. Don't ask me about that. Or we don't know. We haven't tracked and we don't know where that money is actually going. We just know that we're holding on to less than we hoped for. So the pitfall can be different for each operation.
You also mentioned remembering some costs, be it auto repair and stuff like that are easy to forget, especially when you're setting up an annual budget. That's just a great tip I found very helpful when you were talking today. Can you kind of remind me what some of those are?
So things like vehicle repairs, vehicle replacement, if we're prepared for that, maybe we don't have to finance the next one. Maybe we do, but at least be ready for the down payment. Kids' activities, those certainly surprise me as my kids get older. Entertainment, maybe we're going to go to a big 1 or 2 concerts, or maybe you're into something like that. Make sure we're planning on that. Maybe we go to Kansas City Chiefs games. I don't know what it is. Babysitting is an expense to think about. Gifts, that's a really big one. It's very hard to budget, but if we have a rough idea of, hey, this is probably how many gifts we buy in a year and we want to spend about this much on each one, then you kind of know what your number is. Vacation and travel, fun money. If your budget doesn't have a category of fun money, then you probably don't have a fun budget. Have a miscellaneous category. Do not expect everything to get perfectly categorized, and that may make up a big part of your budget. Anything annual, insurance, property taxes, vehicle registrations, subscriptions, those are sneaky. Home repairs and maintenance or home improvement. We often don't start the year thinking through, I'm going to save this much so that I can do these home improvements. That'd be a quick list of things to think about.
Well, no, it's a really great list, especially as you're starting this process and thinking through the budgets. If there was one thing that you could get every farm family to implement tomorrow that would just make their life a little bit better, what would that be?
If we try to pick something basic, pick the thing that if you've got a partner or a spouse in this relationship, in this farming operation, think about the area that you have the most tension and conflict over and try to make a plan around it. Try to make a plan that you can both agree on. It might require a compromise from both sides, but if that's saving for a retirement, or that's putting away money for a home improvement or kids' education or the next farm, sit down and maybe it's just one thing, or maybe it's the list of the top 5 things that you would say, we want to work towards this, and then make a plan towards it. It doesn't always require that you make a full-fledged budget, although that's probably the most powerful. If you make even a partial plan and start working towards that, I think it'll help people greatly move towards their goals so much more than would just, we kind of hope it happens and we talk about it every once in a while, but we haven't sat down and made an intentional plan.
Thanks, Seth. I like how Seth compared budgeting to a workout routine. The key is to find something that works for you and to stick with it over time. Of course, that's easier said than done in today's farm economy. We know farmers are facing headwinds that make managing personal and business expenses a lot more challenging. For the business side of the equation, I want to remind you of 3 events Iowa Farm Bureau is hosting for farmers in the coming weeks. The first is our Ag Market Outlook meeting series. These half-day meetings will offer farmers insights into the factors shaping grain and livestock prices while presenting ag finance considerations and crop and livestock risk management strategies. We're hosting 6 Ag Market Outlook meetings across the state starting February 16th. So be sure to visit iowafarmbureau.com or click the link down in the notes for this podcast episode to learn more and find the meeting near you. The second event is Iowa Farm Bureau's annual Acres of Opportunity Conference. Acres of Opportunity is a day-long conference that allows farmers to learn about niche crop and livestock opportunities and other diversification avenues. That conference is Saturday, February 21st in Spencer, Iowa. And again, you can learn more and sign up at iowafarmbureau.com. The third event is Iowa Farm Bureau's Take Root Farm Succession Meeting Series. If you're hoping to one day pass on the farm to future generations, you really need to check out our Take Root workshops scheduled for February at iowafarmbureau.com or by clicking the link down in the podcast notes. That's all for this edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll join us for our next episode on February 16th. Thank you for doing the work that inspires everything we do here at the Iowa Farm Bureau, and thanks for listening to the Spokesman Speaks.
Thank you for listening to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast by Iowa Farm Bureau. Check out more podcast episodes at iowafarmbureau.com/podcast. You can also find and subscribe to the Spokesman Speaks podcast in the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and other popular podcast apps. We appreciate your ratings and reviews, and we welcome you to email us your feedback at podcast@ifbf.org.